The sound came first, suitcases being dragged across gravel, the scrape and thump that didn't belong in the middle of the night. Zara's fingers gripped the windowsill as she leaned forward in her wheelchair, pressing her face against the cold glass. Below, illuminated by the porch light, her husband of 3 years, Robert, was loading luggage into a silver sedan she didn't recognize. But he wasn't alone. A woman stood beside him, tall and thin, wearing clothes too expensive for 2 a.m. She laughed at something Robert said, the sound drifting up to Zara's second-floor window like broken glass. The woman's hand rested possessively on Robert's arm, and he didn't pull away. He never pulled away anymore, Zara realized with a sick feeling in her stomach. The bedroom door opened behind her. Zara spun her wheelchair around to find her stepmother, Patricia, standing in the doorway. Even at this hour, Patricia looked perfectly put together. Hair smoothed back, lipstick fresh, eyes cold as January ice. "You're awake," Patricia said. Not a question. A statement of fact. "What's happening?" Zara's voice came out smaller than she wanted. "Why is Robert packing? Who is that woman?" Patricia stepped into the room, closing the door behind her with a soft click that somehow felt threatening. "Her name is Vanessa. She's Robert's girlfriend. Has been for about 8 months now." The room tilted. 8 months. Zara's hands trembled on the wheels of her chair. "That's not possible. Robert wouldn't." "Robert would. Robert did." Patricia moved to the window, looking down at the scene below with something that looked like satisfaction. "He's leaving you, Zara? Tonight. Right now, actually. But I'm his wife. We took vows. Vows he no longer wishes to keep." Patricia turned, and in the dim light from the hallway, her face looked different. Harder. The mask she'd worn since marrying Zara's father 5 years ago was finally slipping. "Let's be honest, dear. You've been a burden since the accident. A young man like Robert needs a real wife, not someone who can't even walk." The words hit like physical blows. Zara had been in a car accident 2 years ago, the one that took her ability to walk. Robert had promised to stand by her. Had held her hand through surgeries and rehabilitation. Had said the words that mattered would always matter. He'd lied. "I need to talk to him." Zara moved toward the door, but Patricia blocked her path. "He doesn't want to talk to you. He asked me to handle this." Patricia crossed her arms. "He's done, Zara. It's over. Then I'll stay here. This is my father's house. My home." Patricia's smile was sharp enough to cut. "Actually, it's my house now. Your father left everything to me when he died. The house, the bank accounts, the business. Everything." "That's not true. Dad would have left something for me. I'm his daughter. Check the will if you don't believe me. I have a copy downstairs." Patricia's voice was silk over steel. "Your father changed his will 3 months before he died. He was so grateful I was taking care of him during his illness. So grateful I was managing his affairs while he was too sick to think straight." The implication hung in the air, ugly and impossible. "You're saying you manipulated him while he was dying." "I'm saying he made his choice. And now I'm making mine." Patricia pulled a small duffel bag from behind the door. Zara hadn't even noticed it there. "I packed some of your clothes. Not much, but enough. You're leaving tonight." "What?" Zara's heart hammered against her ribs. "You can't just throw me out. I have nowhere to go." "That's not my problem anymore." Patricia dropped the bag on the bed. "You have until morning to be out of this house. If you're still here at 8 a.m., I'm calling the police and having you removed for trespassing." "This is insane. You can't do this." "I'll call a lawyer." "With what money?" Patricia's eyebrows rose. "You have nothing, Zara. No job, no income, no savings. Robert handled all your finances and he closed your joint account this afternoon. You're penniless." The room spun. Zara tried to breathe, but her lungs wouldn't work properly. Everything, her marriage, her home, her security, was being ripped away in the space of a conversation. "Why?" The word came out broken. "Why are you doing this?" Patricia moved to the door, pausing with her hand on the knob. "Because I can. Because your father's softness toward you always irritated me. Because I'm tired of pretending to care." She glanced back, her face emotionless. "You've been a burden long enough, Zara. It's time you learned to survive on your own." The door closed. Zara sat frozen in her wheelchair, staring at the space where her stepmother had been. Below, an engine started. She wheeled back to the window in time to see the silver sedan pulling away, Robert's face briefly visible in the passing streetlight. He didn't look up, didn't wave goodbye. Just drove away with another woman like 3 years of marriage meant nothing at all. Zara's hands shook as she reached for her phone. She called her best friend, only to remember Simone had moved to California last month. She tried her cousin James, but the number was disconnected. One by one she scrolled through her contacts, realizing with growing horror how isolated she'd become. Robert had slowly cut her off from friends and family, always with a reason that seemed logical at the time. Too much stress. Too much noise. They don't understand what we're going through. He'd been planning this. Maybe for months. Maybe from the moment of her accident. At 3 a.m., Zara finally allowed herself to cry. Not gentle tears, but harsh, gasping sobs that shook her whole body. She cried for her dead father, who she'd believed loved her enough to protect her even after death. She cried for her marriage, which had apparently been a lie. She cried for her home, which was no longer hers. And she cried for herself, the disabled girl who was about to be thrown onto the streets with nowhere to turn. When dawn came through the window, painting the room in shades of gray and gold, Zara's tears had dried. She looked at herself in the mirror above the dresser, really looked. Her face was swollen, eyes red, hair a mess. She looked broken. But she was still breathing. She spent the next 3 hours packing what she could fit in the duffel bag in a backpack. Clothes, toiletries, her father's watch, a photo album. Everything else would have to stay behind. At 7:45 a.m., she wheeled herself to the front door. Patricia was waiting in the foyer, already dressed for the day, coffee cup in hand. "Right on time," Patricia said, checking her watch. "I've called you a taxi. It's waiting outside." Zara looked at the woman who'd pretended to be a mother figure for 5 years. "You won't get away with this. I'll find a way to prove what you did." Patricia's smile was cold. "Oh, sweetheart. I already have gotten away with it." She opened the front door. "Goodbye, Zara. Try not to end up in too much trouble out there. The world isn't kind to people like you." The morning air hit Zara's face as she wheeled herself out of the only home she had left. The taxi driver loaded her bags without comment, his face carefully neutral. As the car pulled away from the curb, Zara looked back one last time. Patricia stood in the doorway, watching her leave with satisfaction written across her features. Zara turned away. She wouldn't give her the satisfaction of seeing her cry again. "Where to, miss?" the driver asked. Zara opened her mouth, then closed it. She had no answer. No destination. No plan. Just a duffel bag, $87 in her wallet, and a wheelchair. "Just drive," she whispered. "I'll figure it out." But as the taxi merged into morning traffic, Zara had no idea how she would figure anything out. She only knew that the life she'd had was over, and whatever came next would be something she'd have to build from nothing. The unsettling part wasn't what had already happened. It was the terrifying question of what would happen next. The taxi dropped Zara off at a park 3 miles from the house that was no longer hers. She'd asked the driver to find somewhere public, somewhere safe, somewhere she could sit and think. He'd looked at her in the rearview mirror with something like pity before pulling up to Morrison Park, a sprawling green space with paved paths and benches. "You sure about this, miss?" he'd asked, unloading her wheelchair. "I'm sure," Zara had lied. That was 6 hours ago. Now the sun was high and hot, and Zara had counted her money 4 times, as if the numbers would magically change. $87. After paying the taxi, she had $43 left. $43 between her and complete destitution. Her phone buzzed. A text from an unknown number. "Account closed per your request. First National Bank." She hadn't requested anything. Robert must have used her information to shut down everything. Zara tried to log into her email, her social media, her online banking. Every password had been changed. Every account locked. Robert and Patricia had been thorough. A young mother passed by with a stroller, giving Zara a curious glance. 2 teenagers on skateboards rolled past, laughing about something on their phones. Everyone had somewhere to be, someone waiting for them, a life that made sense. Zara felt invisible, like she was watching the world from behind glass. Her stomach growled. She hadn't eaten since yesterday afternoon. There was a coffee shop across the street, but Zara needed every dollar. She couldn't waste money on food when she had no idea where she'd sleep tonight. By afternoon, she'd wheeled herself to the public library. It was cool inside, quiet, and no one questioned her presence. Zara parked herself at a computer terminal and began searching for resources. Homeless shelters. Women's centers. Disability services. The list was overwhelming. And every option required paperwork she didn't have, appointments she couldn't make, or waiting lists that stretched for months. "We're closing in 15 minutes, a librarian announced at 5 p.m. Zara's heart sank. She'd been so focused on research that she'd forgotten about finding a place to sleep. She printed out a list of shelters and wheeled toward the exit, her backpack heavy on her lap. Outside, the temperature had dropped. Zara pulled her jacket tighter and studied the list. The nearest shelter was 2 miles away. She started wheeling in that direction, arms already aching from the unfamiliar distance. Her wheelchair was meant for indoor use, not long-distance travel. Every crack in the sidewalk jolted through her spine. An hour later, she reached Mercy House, a women's shelter in a converted church. The building looked worn but clean, with a light glowing in the front window. Zara wheeled up the ramp, thank God there was a ramp, and knocked on the door. A woman in her 50s answered, gray hair pulled back in a bun, face lined with the kind of tired that came from seeing too much suffering. "Can I help you?" "I need a place to stay," Zara said, hating how small her voice sounded. "Please? I have nowhere else to go." The woman's expression softened, but she shook her head. "I'm sorry, honey. We're at full capacity. Have been for 3 weeks now. Please? I'll sleep anywhere. I just need. I can put you on the waiting list, but I can't make promises." The woman pulled out a clipboard. "Name? Zara. Zara Mitchell. Phone number?" Zara rattled it off, knowing her phone would probably be shut off within days when she couldn't pay the bill. "I'll call if something opens up." The woman hesitated. "There's a community center about 4 blocks from here. St. Anthony's. They offer dinner at 6 p.m. for anyone who needs it. No questions asked." "Thank you," Zara whispered. The door closed. Zara sat on the sidewalk, fighting the urge to scream. She was hungry, exhausted, and running out of options. But the woman had mentioned food. That was something. St. Anthony's Community Center was smaller than the shelter, tucked between a laundromat and a corner store. Zara could smell food cooking as she wheeled up to the door. Inside, about 30 people sat at long tables. Families, elderly men and women, people who looked like they'd been living rough for years. Everyone looked up when she entered, then quickly looked away. The unspoken rule of places like this: don't stare. A volunteer waved her over to an empty seat. Just in time. Tonight's lasagna. The food was hot and plentiful, and Zara ate like someone starving because she was. The man across from her, maybe 60 with a gray beard, nodded at her wheelchair. "How long you been out?" he asked. "Out? On the streets. Since this morning," Zara admitted. He whistled low. "Fresh. That's rough. You got people?" "No. Find some. It's how you survive out here." He pointed to a bulletin board on the wall. "They got resources posted. Social workers come by on Wednesdays. You need to get your paperwork sorted fast. Disability benefits, housing assistance, all that. Takes forever, but it's better than nothing." Zara nodded, absorbing the information. This man, a complete stranger, was giving her more help than her husband or stepmother ever had. After dinner, the volunteers announced that overnight sleeping wasn't allowed, but they wouldn't kick anyone out until 8 p.m. Zara stayed as long as she could, charging her phone at a wall outlet and studying the resources posted on the bulletin board. Programs for disabled individuals. Job training services. Legal aid clinics. Everything required an address. A phone number that wouldn't be disconnected. Documentation she didn't have. At 8:15 p.m., Zara wheeled back outside into the dark. The temperature had dropped further, and she could see her breath in the streetlight. She'd passed a park earlier with covered picnic areas. Maybe she could sleep there. The park was empty when she arrived, the playground equipment casting strange shadows in the moonlight. Zara wheeled herself under a covered picnic shelter and pulled out a blanket from her bag. It wasn't much, but it was something. She tried to sleep sitting up in her wheelchair, but every noise made her jump. Footsteps on the path. Car engines. The rustle of leaves. She'd never spent a night outside before, never felt so exposed and vulnerable. Around midnight, rain started falling, soft at first, then harder. The shelter kept most of it off her, but wind blew cold drops onto her face and arms. Zara pulled the blanket over her head and tried not to think about her old bedroom, with its soft bed and warm blankets and locked door. She must have dozed eventually, because she woke to early morning light and the sound of children's laughter. A mother was setting up a birthday party at the next shelter over, hanging streamers and arranging presents. The little girl, maybe 5 years old, spun in circles in her princess dress, completely unaware of Zara watching from 20 feet away. Zara quickly packed her things and wheeled away before anyone could ask questions. She didn't want to ruin a child's birthday party with her presence. The day stretched ahead, empty and terrifying. Zara spent it wheeling from place to place. The library, the community center, a mall where she could use the bathroom and rest without being bothered. People passed her constantly, but no one really saw her. She'd become invisible, just another person on the margins of society. By the third day, Zara had developed a routine. Wake up in the park. Use the bathroom at the library. Eat at St. Anthony's. Charge her phone wherever she could. Sleep in the park. Repeat. Her body ached constantly. Her arms burned from pushing the wheelchair. Her back hurt from sleeping upright. But worse than the physical pain was the mental exhaustion of trying to figure out how to survive, how to get out of this situation, how to become visible again. On the fourth morning, Zara wheeled to a busy intersection downtown, waiting for the light to change. Traffic rushed past, people hurried along the sidewalks, everyone moving with purpose toward destinations that mattered. Zara looked down at herself, dirty clothes, greasy hair, the same outfit she'd been wearing for days. She looked like exactly what she was, a homeless, disabled woman with no future. The light changed to green. Zara started across the intersection, her wheelchair catching on an uneven patch of pavement. She struggled to free it, aware of people passing around her, giving her annoyed looks. The light would change soon. She pushed harder, but the wheel was wedged tight. A horn honked behind her. Zara looked back to see a sleek black car waiting, its engine purring. The light had turned yellow. She pulled frantically at her wheelchair, but it wouldn't budge. The light turned red. The black car's driver door opened. And everything changed. The man who stepped out of the black car was unlike anyone Zara had ever seen in person. He moved with the kind of confidence that came from never having to question his place in the world. Tall, with dark skin that seemed to glow in the morning sunlight, wearing a suit that probably cost more than Zara used to make in a month. His expression was unreadable as he approached her stalled wheelchair. "Are you hurt?" His voice was deep and calm, with no hint of the irritation she'd expected. "I'm stuck," Zara said, tugging uselessly at the wheel. "I'm sorry. I'll get out of your way." "Stop." He knelt beside her wheelchair, his expensive suit touching the dirty street without hesitation. Within seconds he'd identified the problem, a piece of metal grating wedged between the wheel spokes, and freed it. There. The light turned green again. Cars behind them honked more insistently now. "Thank you," Zara said, starting to wheel forward. "Wait." The man stood, studying her face with an intensity that made her uncomfortable. "When's the last time you ate?" The question caught her off guard. "What? You look exhausted and underfed." He pulled out his wallet, extracted several bills and held them out. "Take this." Zara stared at the money, at least $200. "I can't accept that." "Why not?" "Because I don't know you." "Because it's too much." "Because..." She stopped, unsure how to articulate the complicated pride that wouldn't let her take handouts, even when she was desperate. "My name is Julian Brooks," he said, as if that explained everything. "Now you know me." Behind them, someone shouted out their car window. Julian ignored them completely, his attention fixed on Zara. "There's a coffee shop 1 block that way. Meet me there in 10 minutes. I don't need your pity." "Good, because I'm not offering pity. I'm offering breakfast." He checked his watch, a sleek gold thing that probably cost more than a car. 10 minutes. If you don't show, I'll assume you're not interested." He walked back to his car without waiting for an answer. The black vehicle pulled around her with surprising gentleness, and then he was gone, leaving Zara sitting in the middle of the intersection with traffic flowing around her. She should wheel away in the opposite direction. Should ignore the strange encounter and go back to her routine. But her stomach growled, and the memory of real food, not just the simple meals at the community center, was too tempting. Besides, what did she have to lose? The coffee shop, when she found it, was one of those upscale places with modern furniture and artsy photographs on the walls. Zara hesitated at the entrance, suddenly aware of how out of place she looked. Her clothes were wrinkled and dirty. She hadn't showered in 4 days. She probably smelled. But Julian was already inside, sitting at a table by the window. He saw her and waved her over. "I wasn't sure you'd come," he said as she wheeled up to the table. "I wasn't sure either," Zara admitted. A waitress appeared immediately, her smile professional. "What can I get you?" "Coffee. Black," Julian said. "And bring her whatever she wants. Full breakfast. Don't hold back." The waitress turned to Zara, who scanned the menu quickly. Everything was expensive. Everything looked amazing. "The French toast," Zara said quietly. "An orange juice." "Thank you." When the waitress left, Julian leaned back in his chair, still studying her with that unsettling intensity. "Tell me your story." "Why?" "Because you're sitting in a wheelchair at a busy intersection at 8 a.m. on a Tuesday, looking like you've been sleeping rough. Because something put you there, and I'm curious about what." Maybe I like sleeping outside. Maybe, Julian agreed. But I don't think that's true. Zara's defenses rose automatically. You don't know anything about me. I know you're educated. Your vocabulary, your posture, the way you carry yourself. You weren't raised on the streets. I know you're probably dealing with a recent traumatic event because you're not comfortable being homeless yet. You still have your dignity. He paused. And I know you're strong because you're still fighting instead of giving up. The accuracy of his observations shook her. Are you some kind of profiler? I'm a businessman. Reading people is part of what I do. The waitress returned with their drinks, and Julian waited until she left before continuing. I meant what I said in the intersection. This isn't pity. I'm not trying to save you or play hero. I'm simply someone who might be able to help, if you're willing to tell me what you need. Zara wrapped her hands around the orange juice glass, feeling the cold against her palms. Why would you help a stranger? Why wouldn't I? It was such a simple answer, but it made her eyes burn with unexpected tears. She blinked them back quickly. I lost everything 4 days ago. My husband left me for another woman. My stepmother threw me out of my house and stole my inheritance. I have $43, no family, no friends nearby, and nowhere to live. Is that enough story for you? Julian's expression didn't change, but something flickered in his eyes. Your stepmother stole your inheritance. What does that mean exactly? My father died 6 months ago. He had money, property, a business. But he'd married my stepmother a few years earlier, and apparently she convinced him to change his will while he was sick. She got everything. When my husband left, she threw me out with nothing. That sounds illegal. It probably is. But I can't prove anything. I can't afford a lawyer. I can't even afford dinner most nights. Zara's food arrived, and despite the emotional conversation, she immediately started eating. The French toast was perfect, and she couldn't remember when something had tasted so good. Julian waited until she'd eaten half the plate before speaking again. What did your father do? What kind of business? Commercial real estate. He owned properties around the city. Office buildings mostly. What was his name? Thomas Mitchell. Why? Julian's expression shifted slightly. Surprise, recognition, something else Zara couldn't identify. Thomas Mitchell was your father? You knew him? We were business partners on 2 projects about 8 years ago. Before he remarried. Julian set down his coffee cup carefully. Your father was a good man. Honest, fair, smart. We talked about working together again, but then he got sick and I lost touch. The revelation stunned Zara. What were the odds that the stranger who'd helped her in the intersection had known her father? Did you know he died? She asked. I saw the obituary. I meant to attend the funeral, but I was out of the country on business. I sent flowers to the widow. Julian's jaw tightened. I sent them to your stepmother. Patricia. Yes. He leaned forward. Zara? Can I call you Zara? She nodded. Your father told me about you. He mentioned having a daughter, showed me photos. He was proud of you. Very proud. Julian paused. If what you're saying is true, if Patricia manipulated him into changing his will, then that's fraud. And if your husband conspired with her, which it sounds like he did, that's conspiracy. I can't prove any of that. Not yet. But these things can be investigated. Proven. Overturned. Julian pulled out his phone, typed something quickly, then looked at her again. I have a proposition for you. I don't need charity. It's not charity. It's a job offer. He pocketed his phone. My company has been working on accessibility initiatives, making our buildings, services, and programs more inclusive for people with disabilities. But I don't have anyone on staff who actually lives with a disability. I need a consultant. Someone who can review our plans, identify problems, suggest improvements. Zara set down her fork. You just met me in an intersection. I just met a woman who's surviving circumstances that would destroy most people. That's exactly the kind of strength and perspective I need. Julian named a salary that made Zara's head spin. The position includes housing. There's an accessible apartment in one of my buildings that's currently empty. Health insurance, obviously. And access to the company's legal team, if you want to investigate what happened with your father's estate. It was too much. Too good. Too impossible. Why? Zara asked. You could hire anyone. Why offer this to someone you just met? Julian was quiet for a long moment. Because I couldn't help your father when he needed it. I was too far away, too focused on my own business to see that he was in trouble. This is my chance to help his daughter instead. He extended his hand across the table. What do you say? Zara looked at his hand, then at his face. She searched for signs of deception, manipulation, hidden agendas. But all she saw was genuine interest and something that looked like respect. She thought about the park shelter where she'd spent the last 4 nights. About the community center meals and the constant fear and the aching exhaustion. About Patricia's smug face and Robert's betrayal and the way she'd become invisible to the world in just 4 days. Then she thought about her father, who had apparently spoken of her to this man. Who had been proud of her. Who might not have wanted his life's work to end up in Patricia's greedy hands. Zara reached out and shook Julian's hand. His grip was firm and warm. "I say yes," she said. "But I have conditions." Julian smiled for the first time, transforming his serious face into something almost boyish. "I'd be disappointed if you didn't." "Let's hear them." Julian's office was on the 35th floor of Brooks Tower, a gleaming structure of glass and steel that dominated the downtown skyline. Zara had passed this building 100 times in her old life and never thought she'd be inside it, much less working here. The elevator ride up was smooth and fast, so different from the rough streets she'd been navigating for 4 days. Julian stood beside her, scrolling through his phone, giving her space to process. When the doors opened, they revealed a reception area that looked like it belonged in a magazine. Modern furniture, abstract art, floor-to-ceiling windows with views that stretched for miles. A woman in her 30s looked up from the reception desk, her professional smile faltering slightly when she saw Zara's condition. "Mr. Brooks, you have a meeting with the finance team at 10. Reschedule it," Julian said without breaking stride. "And call down to HR. I need a complete onboarding packet prepared for a new hire. Full benefits, executive level. Name is Zara Mitchell." "Yes, sir." The receptionist made notes quickly, her gaze flicking to Zara with barely concealed curiosity. Julian's private office was even more impressive. A corner suite with windows on 2 sides, a massive desk, and seating areas that could accommodate a dozen people. He gestured to a conference table near the windows. "Let's talk details," he said, removing his suit jacket and draping it over a chair. "You mentioned conditions. I want to hear them all before we proceed." Zara wheeled to the table, her dirty backpack looking absurdly out of place in this pristine environment. She'd thought about her conditions during the elevator ride, organizing her thoughts into clear demands. "First, I want a written contract. Everything in writing. Salary, job description, housing arrangements, legal support. I need to know exactly what I'm agreeing to." "Fair. I'll have my lawyers draft something this afternoon." "Second, the legal team investigating my father's estate works for me, not for you. They report to me. Their findings are mine alone unless I choose to share them." Julian nodded. "Agreed. Client-attorney privilege. Your business stays your business." "Third, if I find out this is some kind of setup, if Patricia or Robert put you up to this, if this is another trap, I walk away immediately with no strings attached." Something flickered across Julian's face. Anger maybe, or offense. "I understand the mistrust, given what you've been through. But I promise you this is legitimate. If you want, you can research me before signing anything. Brooks Enterprises is a publicly traded company. My background is an open book." "I will research you," Zara said. "That's not negotiable." "Good. You'd be foolish not to." He pulled out a tablet and began making notes. "What else?" "I want to see the apartment before I agree to live there. And I want the option to leave if it's not suitable. The building is 2 blocks from here. We can go look at it this afternoon. I also want to understand what this job actually involves. You said accessibility consulting, but what does that mean day to day?" Julian set down the tablet, his expression becoming more animated. "Brooks Enterprises owns 17 buildings in this city, plus properties in 4 other states. We also run a tech platform that connects businesses with commercial real estate. About 6 months ago, I realized that almost everything we do is designed for able-bodied people. Our buildings have accessibility features because they're required by law, but we do the minimum. Our tech platform is technically accessible, but it's not user-friendly for people with disabilities. We're leaving out a huge portion of the population. So you want to fix that. I want to do better. And I can't do that without someone who actually understands the challenges." He pulled up files on his tablet. "Here's what I envision. You review all our current properties and identify accessibility issues. You work with our architects and engineers on improvements. You test our tech platform and help our developers make it better. You advise on hiring practices to make our company more inclusive. You create training programs for our staff. Basically, you become the go-to expert on disability inclusion for the entire company." It was a massive job. Possibly too massive for one person. That sounds like it needs a whole department, not one consultant, Zara said. Then build a department. I'm giving you the authority to hire a team if you need one. Julian met her eyes. I'm serious about this, Zara. It's not a PR stunt or a feel-good project. I believe it's good business, morally right and financially smart. But I need someone who genuinely understands the issues to lead it. Someone who won't just tell me what I want to hear. Zara studied him, trying to find the catch. In her experience, powerful men didn't hand out opportunities like this without expecting something in return. What do you get out of helping me specifically? Honestly, I get to sleep better at night knowing I helped Thomas Mitchell's daughter. Julian's voice softened. Your father was kind to me when I was starting out. He took a chance on a young entrepreneur when more established people wouldn't. He told me once that success meant nothing if you didn't lift others up on your way. I never forgot that. The mention of her father brought a lump to Zara's throat. That sounded exactly like something he would say. There's something else, Julian continued. Your father's death bothered me. I heard he was sick, but the timeline seemed off. He was fine 6 months before he died, and then suddenly he was gone. When I tried to reach out to his business partners for information, I got vague answers. Then Patricia announced she was selling off his properties and shutting down his company. The whole thing felt wrong. You think something happened to him? I think it's worth investigating. And if your stepmother is guilty of fraud or worse, I want her held accountable. Julian's expression hardened. Not just for you. For your father. Zara processed this new information. Julian wasn't just offering her a job out of kindness. He had his own suspicions about Patricia, his own reasons for wanting to expose the truth. Maybe that should have bothered her. Maybe she should have questioned his motives more. But right now, sitting in this office instead of sleeping in a park, the reasons mattered less than the results. Okay, she said finally. Show me the apartment. If it works, we have a deal. Julian stood immediately, grabbing his jacket. Let's go now. The apartment was in Brooks Tower, 10 floors below the office. Julian used a key card to access the executive residential floor, where a handful of high-end apartments were reserved for visiting business partners and investors. The unit he showed her was on the corner, with windows facing south and west. It's been empty for 3 months, Julian explained, unlocking the door. The last person who stayed here moved to our Chicago office. Zara wheeled inside and stopped, momentarily speechless. The apartment was beautiful. Modern kitchen, open living space, bedroom with an attached bathroom. But what struck her most was how accessible it was. Wide doorways. Roll-under sinks. A bathroom with a roll-in shower and grab bars. Lowered countertops. Even the light switches were at wheelchair height. The previous tenant was in a wheelchair after a skiing accident, Julian said, following her gaze. We retrofitted the space for him. He recovered enough to walk again, but the modifications stayed. Zara wheeled through each room, testing the space. Everything worked. Everything was designed with her needs in mind. The bedroom had a hospital-grade adjustable bed. The closets had pull-down rods. Even the windows had automatic openers. She stopped in the living room, looking out at the city below. For days ago, she'd been sleeping in a park. Now she was sitting, in an apartment that most people couldn't afford even with a 6-figure salary. It's too much, she said quietly. It's exactly right, Julian countered. You can't do the job I'm hiring you for if you're worried about where you'll sleep or how you'll manage basic daily tasks. This apartment removes those barriers. What's the catch? No catch. The apartment is part of your compensation package. It's yours as long as you work for Brooks Enterprises. If you leave the company, you have 60 days to find alternative housing. Fair? It was more than fair. It was generous to the point of being suspicious. But Zara was tired of suspicion. Tired of fighting. Tired of sleeping in parks and eating at community centers and feeling invisible. When can I move in? She asked. Julian pulled out his phone. How about right now? I'll have my assistant bring up linens, toiletries, everything you need to get started. You can settle in today, come to the office tomorrow morning, and we'll finalize the paperwork. I don't have anything to move. Then it'll be an easy move. Julian's smile was gentle. Zara, you've survived something that would break most people. You're allowed to accept help. You're allowed to have something good happen. The tears she'd been holding back finally spilled over. Zara wiped them away quickly, embarrassed. Sorry? I'm not usually this emotional. You're allowed to be emotional too. Julian pulled a business card from his wallet and set it on the kitchen counter. My direct number. Call if you need anything. And I mean anything, questions, problems, middle of the night freakouts about whether this is real. I'm available. He left her alone in the apartment, and Zara sat in the empty living room for a long time, just breathing. The silence was different here. Not the threatening silence of the park at night, but the peaceful silence of safety. She wheeled to the bathroom and looked at herself in the mirror. She looked terrible, hair greasy, face gaunt, clothes filthy. But her eyes looked different. They looked alive. "Okay, Dad," she whispered to her reflection. "Let's see where this goes." 3 months passed like a fever dream. Zara threw herself into work with an intensity that surprised even Julian. She spent the first 2 weeks studying every Brooks Enterprises property, documenting accessibility issues with meticulous detail. Missing ramps, narrow doorways, inaccessible bathrooms, elevators without braille, parking lots without designated accessible spaces. The list was long and damning. Her first presentation to Julian and the executive team lasted 2 hours. She showed photographs, cited regulations, shared stories of people who couldn't access buildings they needed to use. When she finished, the room was silent. "Well," Julian finally said, "I guess we have work to do." The CFO looked queasy. "Do you have any idea what these modifications will cost?" "Less than the lawsuits we'll face if we don't fix them," Zara replied calmly. "And significantly less than the revenue we're losing by excluding disabled customers." She'd done her homework. She showed them data about the disabled community's spending power, about the demographic trends that meant more people would need accessible spaces as the population aged, about the positive PR that came from companies that got accessibility right. By the end of the meeting, she had approval to start a full accessibility audit and a budget that made her head spin. "You're good at this," Julian told her afterward as they walked, or rather as he walked and she wheeled, back to his office. "I'm angry at this," Zara corrected. "There's a difference. Every building I've documented could have hurt someone like me. Every barrier we put up tells disabled people they don't matter. That makes me angry, and anger is very motivating." Julian laughed. "Remind me never to get on your bad side." But it wasn't just work that transformed those 3 months. It was everything else too. The apartment became a home. Julian's assistant, a efficient woman named Brenda, had stocked it with everything Zara needed, plus things she hadn't known she needed. Soft towels, quality kitchen equipment, a laptop, even fresh flowers. When Zara had tried to thank her, Brenda had waved it off. "Mr. Brooks takes care of his people. That's just how it is." Zara started physical therapy at a clinic that specialized in spinal injuries. The therapist, a no-nonsense woman named Ruth, pushed her hard but never beyond her limits. Slowly, painfully, Zara's strength improved. She could wheel longer distances without her arms screaming. She could transfer from her wheelchair to other surfaces more easily. She learned adaptive exercises that helped with pain management. "You're doing remarkable work," Ruth told her during a session. "Most people in your situation take a year to get where you are in 3 months. Most people don't have as much motivation as I do," Zara replied, thinking of Patricia's smug face and Robert's betrayal. She also started meeting with Brooks Enterprises' legal team. The lead attorney, a sharp-eyed woman named Carolyn Hayes, took Zara's case personally. "I love cases like this," Carolyn admitted during their first meeting. "Rich people thinking they can steal from family members, thinking they're untouchable. It's very satisfying to prove them wrong." They requested copies of her father's will, medical records, business documents. They interviewed his doctors, his business partners, his employees. They examined Patricia's financial records with a forensic accountant. "It takes time," Carolyn warned. "Legal cases always do. But we're building a solid foundation. Your stepmother made mistakes. People like her always do. They get cocky." Meanwhile, Zara's professional reputation grew. She hired 2 additional consultants, both disabled individuals with expertise in different areas, and together they created comprehensive accessibility plans for every Brooks Enterprises property. She appeared at conferences, gave interviews to industry publications, advised other companies who wanted to improve their practices. "You're becoming famous," Julian teased after an article about her appeared in a major business magazine. "I'm becoming visible," Zara corrected. "There's a difference." One evening, after a particularly long day, Julian invited Zara to dinner at an upscale restaurant. She almost said no. She was exhausted, and socializing with her boss outside work hours felt complicated. But something in his expression made her agree. The restaurant was beautiful, with low lighting and soft music and food that tasted like art. Julian ordered wine, and they talked about projects and plans and the future of the company. "I need to tell you something," Julian said halfway through the meal. "I've been investigating on my own, separate from the legal team. Looking into your stepmother's background, her relationship with your father, her finances. Zara set down her fork. What did you find? She's in trouble. The properties she took from your father are mortgaged to the hilt. She borrowed against them heavily, spent the money on God knows what, and now she's behind on payments. The banks are threatening foreclosure. Good, Zara said coldly. There's more. Your ex-husband, Robert, has been helping her. He's been managing the properties, trying to refinance the debt, looking for buyers. From what I can tell, they planned this together. The affair with Vanessa might have been real, but the timing was strategic. He left you right when Patricia needed to get you out of the house. The betrayal shouldn't have hurt anymore. Zara thought she'd processed it, moved past it. But hearing confirmation that Robert and Patricia had conspired made her stomach turn. So they worked together to steal everything from me, she said quietly. It looks that way. Julian reached across the table, stopping just short of touching her hand. I'm sorry. I know this isn't easy to hear. No. But I needed to know. Zara met his eyes. Thank you for finding out. There's something else. Julian pulled out his phone, showing her a series of photographs. This is where your stepmother and ex-husband are living now. A small rental house on the edge of town. They're struggling. They're desperate. And desperate people make mistakes. Zara studied the photos. The house was nothing like the home Patricia had stolen from her. It was small, old, with peeling paint and an overgrown yard. A far cry from the luxury Patricia had become accustomed to. I don't feel sorry for them, Zara said. You shouldn't. Julian put his phone away. I'm telling you this because it means they're vulnerable. If Carolyn pushes hard enough, if the evidence is solid enough, they'll crack. They'll turn on each other. And that's when we'll get the truth. How long? A few more months, maybe. 6 at most. 6 months felt like forever and no time at all. They finished dinner, and Julian drove her back to Brooks Tower. In the parking garage before she got out, he turned to her. You're doing amazing work, Zara. Not just professionally but personally. You've rebuilt your entire life in 3 months. That's incredible. I had help, she said. A lot of help. I wouldn't be here without you. You would have found a way. That's who you are. Julian paused. Can I ask you something personal? Depends on the question. Do you ever think about what comes after? After we expose Patricia and Robert, after the legal battle is won, after everything is settled. What do you want then? Zara considered the question. 3 months ago she'd wanted survival. Then she'd wanted revenge. Now, I want to build something that matters, she said slowly. I want to take my father's legacy and turn it into something that helps people like me. A foundation maybe. Or a non-profit that provides housing and job training for disabled individuals. Something that makes a real difference. Julian smiled. I think that's a perfect answer. That night, alone in her apartment, Zara looked out at the city lights and thought about how far she'd come. From sleeping in a park to living in luxury. From invisible to influential. From broken to rebuilding. But she wasn't done yet. Patricia and Robert still had her father's legacy. They still walked free while her father lay in the ground. That wasn't acceptable. Zara opened her laptop and sent an email to Carolyn. How can we speed this up? What do you need from me? The response came within minutes. Just keep being patient. Justice is coming. I promise. Patience. Zara was learning it, even though every instinct screamed for immediate action. But Julian was right about one thing. Desperate people made mistakes. And Zara would be ready when they did. The call came on a Tuesday morning, 5 months after Zara had moved into Brooks Tower. She was in her office, yes, her office with her name on the door, reviewing architectural plans when her phone buzzed. Carolyn's name flashed on the screen. We've got them, Carolyn said without preamble. I mean, we've really got them. Can you come to my office right now? 20 minutes later, Zara sat across from Carolyn in the law firm's conference room. Spread across the table were documents, photographs, financial records, and what looked like transcripts. I'm going to lay this out chronologically, Carolyn said, her eyes bright with the thrill of a solid case. Then you can decide how you want to proceed. Zara nodded, her heart hammering. Your father's health declined rapidly about 8 months before his death. Not unusual for his condition, but the speed was suspicious. We pulled his medical records and had them reviewed by an independent specialist. Carolyn slid over a medical report.